You're disrespectful to women. For real, you're probably the Jeffrey Epstein of hip-hop.
Sean Diddy Combs was denied bail for the third time, a federal judge saying that the government had proven by clear and convincing evidence that there were no conditions of release that would ensure the safety of the community.
Breaking news like this doesn't come around every day. Imagine the headline. One of the most influential figures in the entertainment world, Sean Diddy Combs, now sitting in a cold, stark cell at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. The man who once commanded a global empire of music, fashion, and luxury is now reduced to a shadow of himself, wearing an orange jumpsuit, eating instant noodles, and battling demons far more terrifying than anything he's ever faced before. But there's more to this story than just a celebrity's fall from grace. It's a chilling tale of paranoia, power, and the weight of secrets that might just be too heavy for even a man like Diddy to carry.
If you're just joining us here, was just arrested and taken into federal custody in New York tonight. Sources tell TMZ Homeland Security swooped into a Midtown hotel late Monday where Diddy was staying, and they arrested him.
When news emerged that Diddy was put on self-harm watch, the world gasped. How could someone who once epitomized confidence and success, a man who rubbed shoulders with presidents and threw million-dollar parties, reach such a low point? The answer lies not just in the charges against him, but in the psychological toll of losing everything in one fell swoop. Sources close to the case whispered that Diddy had entered the detention center with an air of disbelief, as though he still expected his name alone to open doors. But reality hit hard, and it hit fast. The Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center is no luxury retreat. It's a brutal environment where even the most powerful can be brought to their knees. The moment Diddy stepped into the facility, the transformation began. Gone was the man who used to stride through red carpets and private jets with an entourage in tow. In his place was someone visibly shaken, a man grappling with the stark contrast of his new reality. Eyewitnesses described seeing him hunched over during intake, his signature designer suit wrinkled and out of place. His once flawless appearance was marred by exhaustion and a sense of disbelief that clung to him like a shadow. For those who knew him, it was almost unthinkable. This was Diddy, the king of confidence, reduced to just another inmate in an overcrowded facility.
I mean, it's a legitimate concern. No judge wants to wake up and read the headlines the next day. Oh, they treated this guy special and they gave him bond, and now he's gone and he fled from justice. So that's what's in the back of most judges' minds. On the other hand, we deal with cases where clients have significant funds sometimes. And sometimes where there's money, you can craft a unique solution. Years ago, it was the ankle bracelet and the ankle monitor.
Inside the detention center, the atmosphere was electric, with tension the day he arrived. Guards whispered amongst themselves, aware that this wasn't just any new inmate. Inmates, too, watched him with a peculiar mix of curiosity and disdain. For many, Diddy wasn't a hero or an icon. He was a cautionary tale. Whispers traveled quickly through the halls. Rumors about the charges against him, stories of his extravagant lifestyle, and speculation about how long he'd last in a place like this. It wasn't just the inmates who were on edge. Even seasoned guards admitted that having such a high-profile figure in their care brought an unusual amount of pressure. "He's not safe here," one officer reportedly muttered, though it wasn't clear whether he meant from others or from himself. The first few days were a study in contrasts. On one hand, Diddy seemed determined to maintain some semblance of control. He moved through the facility with his head held high, as though trying to convince himself, and everyone else, that he could handle it. He spoke to guards with the same commanding tone he likely used in boardrooms, asking for accommodations that no one in his position could ever hope to receive. But underneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Observers noted that his confidence seemed forced, a thin veneer barely concealing the fear bubbling underneath.
It's just interesting to me that with all the money he has and all the resources he has, they couldn't craft some solution that lets him be under some form of house arrest. And again, it sounds like special treatment, but the truth of the matter is, to incarcerate somebody like him is expensive to all of us. We're taxpayers, and he's got to have unique situations. You can't put him in general population where, everyone wants a piece of him and everyone wants to be his friend and everyone.
Mealtimes became an early battleground. Reports emerged that Diddy was refusing to eat the standard prison meals, claiming he feared they could be tampered with. Imagine being in his position. One former inmate turned consultant speculated on a podcast, "You've made enemies in every corner of the world. You don't think someone might try to get to you in here?" The idea gained traction quickly, fueling rumors that Diddy's paranoia was already starting to consume him. Instead of eating with the other inmates, he reportedly relied on commissary snacks, packaged chips, honey buns, and bottled water. But even that didn't seem to ease his fears. Guards noticed him inspecting every item carefully before consuming it, as though expecting to find evidence of foul play.
Well, Sierra, anything's possible, right? But now this judge has an even harder time, I think, because the past judge locked him up, didn't let him out, and he's still there available for trial. If the new judge lets him out on bond and something goes wrong, and this isn't the analysis that I'm proud to make, right? We shouldn't be saying, well, judges are worried about their own skin and how they look if something bad happens.
His physical appearance began to change almost immediately. By the time of his first court appearance, just weeks into his incarceration, observers were stunned. Gone was the robust, impeccably groomed mogul they were used to seeing. In his place stood a man who looked visibly thinner, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes hollow and bloodshot. "It's astonishing," one journalist remarked. "This astonishing," one journalist remarked. "This is someone who spent decades projecting an image of invincibility, and now you can see the toll this is taking on him." The contrast was stark, especially when compared to footage of Diddy just months earlier, living his best life in Central Park, laughing and playing hacky sack with friends. The man standing in court now was unrecognizable. But it wasn't just the physical toll that had people talking. It was the psychological unraveling that seemed to be happening before everyone's eyes. Paranoia became a constant companion for Diddy, according to sources within the prison. He was said to frequently glance over his shoulder, even when surrounded by guards. He avoided conversations with other inmates, choosing instead to isolate himself whenever possible. And then there were the whispers, the ones that hinted at a deeper fear, something beyond the immediate threat of prison violence. He keeps saying, "They're watching me," one guard reportedly confided, but he never says who they are. The paranoia reached a fever pitch after Diddy's third bail attempt was denied. By this point, he'd already been rejected twice, but insiders say he truly believed the third time would be different. He had a team of top-tier lawyers arguing on his behalf, and he was convinced they'd be able to secure his release. When the denial came down, the reaction was unlike anything anyone had seen before. There was no outburst, no dramatic display of anger. Instead, Diddy seemed to collapse in on himself. Witnesses described him sitting silently in the courtroom, his hands clasped in front of him, his eyes fixed on a point in the distance. It was as though the fight had been drained out of him.
They're going to try everything. They're going to try to transfer him. They're going to try to get him out. You know, in a normal case where it's a high-profile person or a well-funded person, the prosecution and the judge is a little bit more concerned about a wrongful prosecution, because people that are mad that they're being arrested for a crime they didn't commit can turn around and file for malicious prosecution.
Back in the detention center, the fallout from that denial was immediate. Guards reported hearing him pacing his cell late into the night, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the corridor. "This isn't how it's supposed to go," he was overheard muttering, the words tinged with disbelief. At one point, he reportedly slammed his fists against the wall of his cell, his voice rising in a desperate cry. "They lied to me!" The outburst sent ripples through the facility, with inmates speculating about what or who he was referring to. And then came the sock incident. It was the moment that took the whispers and rumors to a whole new level. Guards found Diddy slumped on the floor of his cell one morning, a sock tied loosely around his neck. The incident was immediately classified as a self-harm attempt, but questions lingered. For one, the sock wasn't tied tightly enough to leave significant marks, leading some to speculate that it might have been a cry for help rather than a genuine attempt to end his life. Others weren't so sure. "That's not how someone like him does it," one inmate reportedly said. "If he wanted out, he'd find a way to make it happen." This was about sending a message.
Hey, real quickly, all that commissary stuff, he's not getting any of that because people in the SHU have an abbreviated list. So he's out of luck. No stake for him. Yeah, he is on watch. This guy thought he would have went home. All of a sudden, he didn't get bond. Remember, the first night that he was there,
Theories abounded. Some believed it was a calculated move to be transferred to a medical ward where conditions might be easier. Others saw it as a sign that Diddy was finally breaking under the pressure. But the most chilling theory was the one no one wanted to say out loud, that the sock wasn't his idea at all. Whispers began circulating that someone else in the facility, or someone with influence outside of it, had staged the incident as a warning. "He's got too many enemies," one guard was overheard saying, "and not just in here." The sock incident marked a turning point. Diddy's demeanor changed noticeably in the days that followed. The once defiant mogul now seemed withdrawn, his movements slower, his gaze more distant. He stopped talking to the guards, stopped pacing his cell at night. It was as though he'd resigned himself to his new reality, a man who'd finally realized the full weight of his situation. So the sock incident became the spark that set off an inferno of speculation. Inside the walls of Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, whispers became full-blown conspiracies. Was this a genuine cry for help, a calculated move to manipulate the system, or something much darker orchestrated by unseen forces? The truth, as always, seemed to lie somewhere in the cracks of competing stories, but one thing was clear: Sean Diddy Combs was unraveling, and the entire world was watching.
and I understand that he has a shrink coming by his cell to see him several times a day. And now there's talk about putting him in, it's like a bubble. It's like a cell that has like a plexiglass wall in it where they have inmates watching you. That's actually their job, to keep an eye on the inmates that are on watch.
The days following the sock incident were tense, to say the least. Diddy's once commanding presence had all but disappeared. He barely spoke, kept his head down, and avoided eye contact with both guards and inmates. His pacing had stopped, replaced with long hours of sitting silently on the edge of his cot, staring at the wall as though it might offer him answers. It was a far cry from the man who, just weeks earlier, had been described as strutting through the prison with an almost delusional air of invincibility. Now, he seemed haunted, by what or by whom, no one could say for sure. But the rumors didn't stop. If anything, they gained momentum. The most chilling whispers revolved around the list, a supposed document that Diddy was rumored to have in his possession, or at least knowledge of, containing the names of high-profile individuals connected to his sprawling empire. According to prison gossip, this list wasn't just a career-ending liability. It was a ticking time bomb. Some said it included powerful names from politics, business, and entertainment, people who would do anything to ensure it never saw the light of day. Whether the list was real or just a product of paranoia didn't seem to matter. The mere idea of it was enough to keep everyone on edge.
Okay, some people do think that Diddy can help him, but this guy's going to be locked up forever. His case will probably take at least 3 years to litigate. He'll stay at MDC. There's rumors that he wants to go to Essex County Jail in New Jersey because he doesn't like MDC. He's a Marshals inmate. There's no way they're going to transfer him back and forth, I don't know, several times a week.
The guards were particularly wary. They'd already been dealing with the logistical nightmare of housing a celebrity inmate, but the added tension surrounding Diddy's rumored knowledge made their jobs all the more difficult. One guard was overheard warning a colleague, if that list is real, we've got a target sitting in Subblock B. It wasn't just idle talk, either. Extra precautions were ordered, and Diddy's movements were closely monitored. Even routine tasks like transferring him to the visitation area or the infirmary were carried out with heightened security. Meanwhile, Diddy's behavior only fueled the fire. He became increasingly reclusive, refusing to leave his cell even during recreation time. When guards attempted to coax him out, he reportedly muttered something about not being safe out there. Safe from what, though? Or from whom? The paranoia seemed to be consuming him, and it wasn't long before the inmates began to notice. He's scared of something. One inmate confided to a prison consultant who later spoke on a podcast. You can see it in his eyes. Whatever's going on in his head, it's eating him alive.
Wait a minute. Say that again. Say that again. Back up. You're saying that there's tapes and they're being shopped?
Yes, there have been people already shopping.
We've heard about the tapes, but
yes.
The shopping thing is...
Yes, there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of.
Theories about who might be after Diddy multiplied by the day. Some inmates speculated that his powerful enemies were using their influence to ensure he never made it out of prison alive. Others believed the sock incident was staged, not by Diddy, but by someone sending him a message. The idea wasn't as far-fetched as it might seem. Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center had long been plagued by corruption, with guards and inmates alike being caught smuggling contraband or acting as pawns for outside forces. It wasn't hard to imagine that someone with the right connections could orchestrate something from behind the scenes. Then there was the issue of Diddy's refusal to eat. His paranoia about being poisoned had reached new heights, and he now refused all meals provided by the prison. Instead, he survived on a meager diet of prepackaged commissary snacks, ends he could inspect thoroughly before consuming. One guard described watching him open a bag of chips, shaking the contents onto a napkin, and examining each piece before taking a bite.
It sounds like there was probably a lot of hidden cameras as well. Is that what is being talked about?
Yes, this was actually in his Atlanta home, at a home he had in Atlanta at one point. And it does seem that the person isn't like looking into the video, so to me, doesn't seem like that person knows they're being videotaped. It doesn't seem like they're active participant in the videotaping.
Despite his dwindling physical state, Diddy's mind seemed to remain sharp, albeit increasingly erratic. He was often seen scribbling in a small notebook, though no one knew what he was writing. Some believed it was a journal, a way for him to process his thoughts. Others speculated it might contain the infamous list, or at least clues about its existence. Whatever the case, the notebook became a source of fascination among inmates and guards alike. The trial itself loomed large in everyone's minds, especially Diddy's. Scheduled for May 2025, it promised to be one of the most sensational cases in recent history. Legal experts predicted a media circus with every detail of Diddy's personal and professional life laid bare for the world to see. But for those inside the detention center, the trial was secondary to the drama unfolding within its walls. The question on everyone's lips wasn't whether Diddy would be found guilty or innocent. It was whether he'd even make it to the courtroom.
This is very significant, just from who we associate Diddy being and everything we've seen him do over the decades. Like you said, this is quite the downfall to go from, we saw the mansions back in March that were raided by the feds. So to go from living in those mansions to being in a jail cell right now, I think it really underscores the magnitude of of what he's facing and the weight of the federal government.
As the weeks dragged on, Diddy's health became a growing concern. Observers noted that he appeared thinner and more frail with each passing day. His once vibrant skin had taken on a pale, almost ghostly hue, and his movements had slowed to a shuffle. While some attributed his decline to the stress of his situation, others believed there was more to the story. Rumors circulated that he was being deliberately weakened, whether through poisoned food, psychological manipulation, or some other means. Of course, there was no evidence to support these claims, but in an environment as charged as the detention center, evidence wasn't necessary to fuel speculation. One particularly unsettling incident occurred during a routine head count. When the guards reached Diddy's cell, they found him sitting on the floor, staring blankly at the wall. When asked if he was okay, he reportedly mumbled something unintelligible before resuming his silence. The guards exchanged uneasy glances before moving on, but the moment left an impression. The inmates, too, began to distance themselves from Diddy. At first, there had been a certain fascination with having such a high-profile figure in their midst. But as his paranoia deepened and his behavior grew more erratic, that fascination turned to unease. No one wanted to be associated with him, not because of his fame, but because of the danger they believed it brought.
I think it's to be expected, just the shock of this and the questions about what is ahead of us. I mean, how long is he going to be in custody? Is this an R. Kelly situation? Is he going to not get out for a number of years? Is he going to end up serving a long-term prison sentence from this? Or does he have a chance of beating these charges at a trial that could come?
Even Diddy's legal team seemed to be feeling the strain. While they publicly maintained that their client was focused and determined, insiders suggested otherwise. One source close to the case described tense meetings in the visitation room, with Diddy growing increasingly agitated and distrustful of his own lawyers. He thinks everyone's out to get him, the source said, even the people trying to help him. The paranoia reached its peak when Diddy reportedly accused one of the guards of spying on him. According to witnesses, he became visibly agitated during a routine cell check, demanding to know why the guard was watching him. The guard, taken aback, tried to explain that it was standard procedure, but Diddy wasn't having it. "Don't think I don't know what's going on," he reportedly said, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. The incident only reinforced the belief among inmates and staff that Diddy was teetering on the edge. And yet, even in the midst of his unraveling, there were moments that hinted at the man he used to be. One evening, during a rare trip to the recreation yard, Diddy joined a group of inmates playing cards. For a brief moment, the tension seemed to lift as he laughed and joked with the others. But the moment was fleeting. As soon as the game ended, he retreated back to his cell, the weight of his situation settling over him once more. As Diddy's story continues to unfold, viewers are left with more questions than answers. Was the sock incident a genuine cry for help, or was there something more sinister at play? And what about the rumored list? Does it really exist? And if so, who is willing to go to such great lengths to keep it hidden? The comment section is open, and the audience is eager to hear thoughts and theories. Don't forget to leave comments and share insights. Until the next riveting update, stay tuned and keep the conversation going.